I don't know that I would be here, or a lot of nuclear advocates who do this kind of thing part or full time without the work of the Thorium Energy Alliance. Most prolific nuclear advocates in the world, folks like Mark Nelson, even, who couldn't be here today, credit this organization, the butterfly effect of nuclear advocacy here. So if you're in Albuquerque in October of 2022, you saw me run through a bulleted list of positive developments for nuclear. Man, so we're here for the sequel now, and holy cow, it's been a really busy 16 months or whatever it's been since then. My goodness. So we are going to start since then. So that was in October, I believe, that conference. I don't know what happened in November. I think we're all just like working off our hangovers, but not a whole lot. So we'll start in December of 2022. And I don't think we could take credit for this, but yeah, Miss America, nuclear engineer Grace Stanke. That's pretty awesome. She just did some collaboration with Kirsten, who does a lot of our TikTok videos. If you follow us on Instagram, or I think we post them a few different places, but you'll see Kirsten, the very fun young blonde lady, telling us all about nuclear and energy. Okay, let's get into January of 2023. So NRC did what a lot of us thought wasn't possible and certified an SMR design. It was NuScale, and that maybe isn't all of our favorite reactor design, but it's a start, and we see the regulator very much interested in getting better at approving new designs. So very promising step for the future there. Then we saw Hitachi sign a contract to deploy the BWR X300 in Ontario. I know maybe some of us in here would have preferred if they picked terrestrial energy, but alas, it is a good sign for the industry that SMRs are getting permission to go forward and funding to do so. In Belgium, a country that's typically been anti-nuclear for the last decade and change. We saw the extension of a couple of their reactors, Doel and Tihange. So very good sign for Europe turning around nuclear there. All right, what happened in February? We got Westinghouse agreeing to build Poland's first nuclear power plant by 2032. They're going to do some AP1000s there. March, this one kind of came out of nowhere for me, but Arkansas passed a bill establishing a nuclear fuel recycling program. I'm guessing Curio is aware of that. Yeah, it's sort of a bill to establish a plan type of thing, so not a whole lot of specifics yet, but they have directed one of their I think their state energy department to pursue this, which is a very good step. I'd love to see some other states do similar things. Virginia passed a bill establishing a nuclear innovation hub. So this is a trend we saw a lot over the last couple of years, of state level legislation showing interest in advanced nuclear. And then we saw our first hydrogen production from a nuclear power plant in March. So this isn't a crazy amount of hydrogen. I was just looking up. It's roughly 500 kilograms a day, which isn't an absurd amount. I guess they're producing that with like 1.5 megawatts of electricity. But it's a pilot. It'll get things going, and hopefully we're able to scale up hydrogen production massively with the work of our friends Synergetic and others on this. And then John mentioned this already, but very cool. El Salvador signed an MOU with Thorium Energy Alliance to deploy thorium-fueled reactors. That's awesome. Also in March, I forgot to mention this one, or put it on the slide, but the DOE released the liftoff report. And in that, they projected that we were going to need something like 500 gigawatts of new, clean, firm electricity from something like maybe new nuclear. Could also be, I suppose, gas with carbon capture or geothermal, but they're projecting that need, and also stating explicitly that 200. They think 200 gigawatts of new nuclear by 2050 would be feasible. That would be incredible, considering we have just under 100 gigawatts today. But as you'll see in a second, the ambitions of some of these other countries are even greater than that goal we have called out, and maybe we should rise to that challenge. All right, so we'll get going with April here. Finland's Olkiluoto 3 started. That's an EPR generating 30% of Finnish Power. Good stuff. In May, so this is sort of a summary one, but by May of 2023, 11 states had passed 14 pieces of pro-nuclear legislation. A lot of feasibility studies. I called out some more specific ones on the previous slide, and starting to see a little bit more Democratic support, but at this point it was a lot of kind of Republicans sort of like ramming stuff through against the votes of some Democrats. I'm happy to see that trend change a little bit, where we're getting more and more Democrats, because I think we need bipartisan support for these policies to be durable long term. Oliver Stone released Nuclear Now, so that was great. Get the message out there a little more broadly with a pretty well-known director. Vogtle 3 finally enters service. Yeah. Fukushima wastewater released. Is this a win? I say so. Absolutely. God, I mean, about damn time, right? Man, it's so heavily diluted. It's totally inconsequential, yet they're so worried about it from a public perception standpoint. And I think in part because of hard work of advocates, pushing journalists to try to cover this a little more honestly. And the IAEA was really great in helping monitor and make the release more credibly seen. They're able to begin that. This was pretty cool. Great British Nuclear, which was first around from like the 70s to the early aughts. It's back, baby. And they have a goal for 24 gigawatts of new nuclear, up from their existing 6.5 by 2050. So that's a 3 to 4x increase there. And they're going to need it too, with all of their advanced gas reactors coming offline. I got to tour one of them in 2021, the Hunterston gas reactor. And it's just a shame. They're great plants, but they built them using graphite, and they didn't expect the graphite to have cracks and kind of degrade over time. So they're very much more age limited than our PWRs, where we're using water as a moderator instead. So they got some work to do, and they're going to be switching over mainly to PWRs. It seems they got a few EPRs going now. India has been building and raising their nuclear ambitions. So they connected this Kakrapar 3 700 megawatt reactor and got that churning out clean electrons. Start of HALEU production happened November 2023. Centrus produced their first 20 kilograms of HALEU. We're going to need a lot more than that, but it's a start. All right, what else we got? So December, holy cow. I think nuclear was on the nice list because Santa had lots of gifts for us in December. For one, after a almost decade-long push, we got Diablo Canyon extended. Yeah, I'll take some applause for that. Hell yeah. Man, that was great. So we still got our work cut out for us a little bit. It only takes it to 2030, but we are PG&E has applied for that 20-year NRC license, and they are taking a look at that now. So if we do put in the work, I expect Diablo Canyon will go for another 20 beyond that, which would be amazing. Illinois lift their moratorium for SMRs only. A little bit of maybe Pyrrhic victory isn't the right term, but they were so close. They, with a veto-proof majority, just blanket lifted the entire moratorium, and then the governor came back with a veto, some demands that, hey, we don't like this because it'll open up the door to expensive boondoggles like Vogtle, and the legislature, despite a lot of meetings that we had and a lot of letters and pressure, they decided, okay, we will cave to the governor's pressure and just pass it for 300 megawatts and less. Of course, this excludes things like the natrium reactor. It excludes, I guess, the AP300, which is technically over 300 megawatts electric. I think I heard it's like 325 technically. It excludes Rolls-Royce, 470 megawatts, if that would ever be built in the U.S. And of course, the AP1000, which is the one we have the most experience building at the moment. So a little bit of a troubling trend, though. You could see it that way, or you could see it as, baby steps, depending on, and California is looking at similar step with 300 megawatts and less, and we are pushing back very hard on that, saying, and maybe this is a good point for me to say, SMRs should not be the buzzword here that we push as advocates. We should be pushing for advanced reactors. That is more inclusive of larger reactors. We shouldn't really care what size they are as long as they are produced economically, maybe with some degree of modularity. They could be large modular reactors. Why not? Why close the door to promising technology? We did see the NRC approve. I heard a Kairos employee here right there. Ian, hell yeah. NRC approved construction of their molten salt cooled advanced reactor. It uses a solid fuel, but very, very cool that's going to be built in Tennessee at Oak Ridge. That is awesome. Excited for that. The Hermes. And then we saw Ukraine and Westinghouse ink a deal for 9 AP1000s. Incredible. Hopefully, I don't know. Right now, it's hard to imagine building things in Ukraine, but man, at some point, hopefully this war can come to an end, and they're going to need to rebuild a lot of power plants. So they'll need that. We saw as part of the NDAA, we had initiatives to boost domestic production of HALEU and direct the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to expedite regulatory reviews for nuclear fuel supply activities. So that was good. Some of those provisions were part of a different bill, but they got stuck in there. So progress, make sure we got fuel for advanced reactors. European Investment Bank, longtime antagonist to nuclear projects, said, you know what? Yeah, we're open. We'll fund new nuclear projects. They're bankable, I think was one of the quotes they had. SMRs, things like that. Positive development in Europe there. South Korea connected a new APR 1400 to the grid. And then we had the climate talks. Oh, man. Generation Atomic was there with a bunch of our international partners as part of the Nuclear for Climate and Net Zero Nuclear coalitions, and a huge development where we had 25 countries pledged to triple global nuclear capacity by 2050. That's pretty awesome. And let's see. And then we also had something called the Sapporo 5 come together to put a little over $4 billion into enrichment and conversion capacity, recognizing that maybe we shouldn't be dependent on Russia for this anymore. So that was good. And just a couple photos here. You saw there's the 22 countries, I think it was on the first day, and by the end of the week it was 25. And then on the right you see a couple of our ladies at our Generation Atomic booth at the COP talking to folks. And would that have happened at COP28 if not for previous COPs having very progressively louder and louder nuclear advocacy? I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I feel like we have shifted the Overton window over the last 5-8 years because of this persistent advocacy, and it's so hard to measure. Sometimes it feels very squishy, but then you get something huge like this happening. So this was from the Glasgow COP in 2021, where we had this big nuclear flash mob dance in a public square. It was a lot of fun. Nice. So we are now into this year, the year of our Lord, 2024. And we see Japan's regulator, the NRA, approving fuel loading at Kashiwazaki Kariwa, which is the largest nuclear plant in the world. Not the largest operating one, unfortunately, but maybe that'll change soon, because they are getting permission now to put fuel back into some of the units and get that thing going again. So that's great. Japan's up to 12 reactors restarted now, so they have a long ways to go, but it's a huge priority for them now, amazingly. The White House dropped their renomination of the somewhat anti-nuclear commissioner, Jeff Barron. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a campaign that was started by Breakthrough Institute that we joined with, helped out to keep him out of there. And yeah, we NRC, I mentioned this earlier, but began public comments for Diablo Canyon license renewal. Ontario saved the Pickering nuclear plant, and we have plans for refurbishing 4 units there. It's 2 gigawatts for Canada. Very nice. Westinghouse going to deploy some AP300s in the UK. European Parliament officially labeled nuclear power as strategic for EU's decarbonization. So opening door for more subsidies. You might remember that just 3-ish years ago, there was question on whether it would be included in the green finance taxonomy. And thanks to a ton of advocacy, we organized an effort that sent 5,000 letters to members of the European Commission and European Parliament with friends from 13 countries. That was fun, translating the same letter a whole bunch of times. That was good. Juice, Power, Politics, and the Grid was released. Did anybody watch this on YouTube yet? Robert Bryce, Tyson Culver, yeah? All right, I'm seeing about 25%, which is about 75% lower than it should be, but we'll get there. Yeah, really good series, raising awareness of grid reliability. It starts out with the Texas story of Winter Storm Uri. Talks about how Enron helped break the grid by establishing the market system there, and then how we can fix it all with nuclear is a part of it. Nice. All right, we're into March here. Palisades gets a $1.5 billion loan for restarting, approved by the DOE. First time we get a nuclear plant coming back from the dead. Hell yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah. I used to sort of be like, I don't like Holtec. They're the grim reapers of nuclear. They're just there to take apart the plants. Now they're restarting and they're going to build SMRs there. So big turnaround. Good job, Holtec. Yeah, and we had this international summit in Brussels, kind of the follow-up from COP, where we had countries further kind of strengthen their commitments to building out nuclear. Vogtle 4, yes, connects to the grid. And then here we are this month. We had Atomic Hope was screened. That's a Frankie Fenton film that has actually a big chunk of it is about the thorium community at the beginning. Screened over 40 times for universities and community groups. Pretty cool. And India announced plans to hit 100 gigawatts of nuclear by 2047. That's a 12-fold increase on what they currently have. So massive ambition there. And clearly they need it, right? With the low energy use per capita and tons of coal. So I love that they've put that out there. And that is the nuclear wins for 2024. What made these wins possible? Partially advocacy, I think, because we're getting the good ideas out there. Also, economics, policy changes. They're sort of all different, same sides of the same coin or different sides of the same coin, all working together. So advocacy has a really important role to play here as we go through. Diablo Canyon started out this in 2016, and then it's 7 years later. We're celebrating that extension. And if we don't show up, what happens? Things like this. We get a lot of high-level nuclear waste storage. This is in Texas, where we are here. I mean, you'd think Texas would probably be fine with this, but we this one was kind of under the radar. There wasn't a whole lot of advocacy around it. And what do you know? They banned it here. I don't know. Maybe oil and gas industry had something to do with it. I'm not sure. What else? In the Northeast in Massachusetts, we saw a ban on disposing lightly tritiated water. Jim Conca's got some stories about that. He was in the room when these folks in these costumes came up and talked about how, this water that you'd have to, drink eight gallons of in a single sitting to get, the same as a banana or something on that order. I forget what the numbers are, but just absurd levels of this water you'd have to drink to equal very small amounts of radiation. They're talking about how we're all going to grow extra arms and legs. And then Spain is one of the fronts of our advocacy fight right now. They're attempting to pursue the same energy plan as Germany right now, learning nothing from their example. Policymakers sort of feel beholden to the people that, surprisingly, that show up and talk to them. I'm a city council member, and at a instance of this where there was a great development for some affordable housing, and the only people that showed up to talk about it initially were the people that didn't like it because they're worried about parking or whatever housing values. And it made it hard because it checked every other box of being good for the community, but just like the very small amount of people showed up, and it made it hard to disagree with it as a result. So showing up gives the policymakers that political cover to make the right decision for nuclear and for energy. So we got to show up to provide that balance so they don't feel like they're speaking out against the rule of the people, even if it makes the most sense. In service to that, we've been working on the moratorium in Minnesota, projecting things like this up on buildings, meeting with lawmakers. We have built a coalition of about 60 electric cooperatives and a dozen unions and some trade associations. So we're going to be pushing hard on that next year. It's very, very exciting. And and then I think this is the point where I bring up my brother, Matt, who I've been working with for the past couple of years. He's been doing a great job, and he'll talk about some of our outreach strategies and efforts. So good luck, Matt. Have fun.
All right. So Eric laid out some of the great wins we've had over the last year and a half or so. And it's safe to say that if all this momentum is building for more nuclear, we can probably expect to see a lot more nuclear being built in the next coming decades. And so Eric mentioned we're working on turning over the moratorium in Minnesota. So removing roadblocks like that is one key thing to help make this a smoother deployment. But if all of our dreams come true and we do have this sort of situation where we're building new nuclear, that brings us on to a whole nother challenge that we may not have been thinking about too much up until this point. And that is how we're going to build that workforce that's going to help us build and deploy these nuclear reactors. Imagine the situation where many of you who spent probably a big portion of your lives trying to make it so that we can build more nuclear in the United States. And when we get there, we have to put the brakes on it because we just don't have the workforce to pull it off. So Department of Energy recent liftoff report has estimated that we're going to need another 375,000 new jobs in the nuclear industry by 2050. And this is jobs that are directly related to deployment and operations. If you expand that out to supply chain and other realms that it's not incorporated, that number gets a lot higher. Currently, directly in deployment operations, we're sitting at about 100,000. So that essentially means we've got to pretty close to quadruple our current workforce. And on top of that, there's another factor. We need to replace our retiring workforce. It might not be news to many of you, but nuclear does not exactly have a young workforce. We do have more people that are in the second half of their career as opposed to that first half of the career. So not only do we have to replace people that are retiring, but we have to actually build up people entering the nuclear workforce to build up and meet that 375,000 number of jobs. So there's reason to be optimistic though, because there is Gallup research that has showed that 75% of students, we're talking like high school, middle school age students, have an interest in entering a STEM career. Unfortunately, only 29% of them actually see themselves as actually pursuing one of them. So how do we get them to commit? I actually can relate to this because I remember in high school, growing up in a small town, my favorite class in high school was the physics class. I actually set the record for the toothpick bridge that held the most weight. And but in the end, I decided to pursue a business degree because I don't know, I just was a little intimidated by the math and the physics and all the hard work in school involved with it. So I kind of opted for what I thought of as a safer option. And if we look at bachelor's degrees in the US today, it might be hard to read this graph, but the black line on top is business degrees, by far the highest. That's me. One dime a dozen these days, I think. Further down, we see health professions, health field related careers. Then we've got social sciences in yellow, and then sort of tied on the bottom is a tie for, that's where we have our engineering, sciences, and math. So there's a big gap we want to bridge. We want to be able to convert some of those students that want to have a career in STEM, or that are interested in having a career in STEM, and actually commit to it. So how are we gonna do it? Well, as an organization, we have decided to develop some programs that are gonna help inspire high school and middle school students in pursuit of nuclear and other STEM careers. And we're gonna do that by making visits to science classrooms across the US, as well as after-school programs. We also have another initiative where we're going to actually develop educational materials about energy and place them in schools in the hands of teachers that are more than capable of pulling it off. We just need to get them to the materials. I'm going to dig into each of those programs in just a second, but I also want to tell you, why did we pick high school and middle school students? And the big reason is this is a very impactful age, right? Kids are trying to decide what they want to do in their careers at this time of life. I remember personally being intimidated by getting into something with engineering, physics. But if I had somebody come into my school and function as that role model and tell me, oh, you can do this, and this is what it would look like if you do this, that would have probably been a big impact for me. Also, it's just that whole idea of giving that important, lasting impression at that age when they're making that decision. Once again, we think we can bridge the gap between the kids that have STEM interests and the ones that want to pursue them. I said it earlier, 75% have an interest, 29% pursue. Being a role model in the classroom, we can help maybe bridge that gap a little bit. And then lastly, we also see this as a sustainable path for building a workforce pipeline. There's always new students coming up of age, entering into these science classes. And if we can build a relationship with a high school or middle school, with that teacher, we can go back year after year without trying to have to seek out a new audience each time. So what are these programs? Well, first program is called Atomic Horizons. And the objective of this is to spark wonderment in nuclear science through its role in clean energy by visits to schools. And these might be a high school science class takeover. It could be an after-school program that the teacher feels that is more appropriate. It could also be done virtually. But the idea here is to create a template of an impactful experience about nuclear energy that can be replicated in classroom after classroom across the US. And in this template, we want to be able to mix interaction, visuals, demonstrations, make it fun, whatever we need to do to make it sort of an impactful, lasting experience. And I should point out there's other organizations that have created educational materials for classrooms, but nobody's really taken the initiative to sort of make it in a replicable template and then really worked hard to get it into classroom after classroom. And we feel like we are uniquely positioned for that. That's because Generation Atomic has a very broad base of volunteers. We span probably a good chunk of the US if we really tap into our volunteer base. And we plan on using them to assist us in delivery. So it doesn't mean we're going to have, how are we doing on time? Did I just see a, oh, okay, all right, well, okay, I'll keep moving. Doesn't mean we're going to take everybody, but amongst our volunteer base, we have some really skilled, smart volunteers that are good communicators and can also know how to be good for talking on this. We also see this as having a potential for global impact. As a matter of fact, our volunteer base does expand beyond the U.S. borders, so this could be something that could be done outside of the U.S. In fact, the idea for this was inspired by a number of international events. Two of the pictures you see here were two of our volunteers that decided to take on their own high school classroom takeovers. One is Luke in Canada, and then we've got Dennis in Nigeria. And then probably even most importantly, I actually had a very personal experience seeing this happen. When I was down in Jamaica last year, I was invited by Dr. Charlene Smith to join for a full week of a nuclear energy boot camp that they put on down there. And it was really fascinating to see the light bulb that went off in these kids after being exposed to nuclear energy, the inspiration, and I think there are some really big impacts that were made there. And I should point out that this organization is also developing their own version of this to do like week-long boot camps at various places outside of the country, inside the country, and we even do have one of the people here that is working on that program, Shirley Rodriguez in the back there. So I'd like to acknowledge her on that as well. Okay, so we're getting close on time, so I'm gonna just breeze through this last one. The second program we're working on is called the What's Up Clean Energy Program. And so this is a program where we are gonna introduce a suite of educational materials, lesson plans, training on how to pull it off, all based around energy and all based around the megawatt card game. And so this is a card game, many of you are familiar with it, that teaches you how to build an electricity grid, balancing costs, sustainability, reliability, all those things. And so we are working on having classroom materials prepared, like a full kit that includes lesson plans that we can deliver with games to a teacher, so they've got everything they need to pull off a very good workshop based on energy. Some of the lesson plans is how to build sustainable grids, understanding costs and benefits of your various electricity technologies, looking how electricity is generated around the world, how other countries are doing it, how have they decarbonized, that sort of thing. And we also feel it's going to be interactive game-based learning, which lots of research tells you that this is a good way for students to learn. So lastly, we're very thankful for John and his support, Thorium Energy Alliance, for having us here. And if you are curious on how you can help, there's 3 different ways. One, you can support us individually by making a donation. Our website is the easiest way to access that. If you happen to know a teacher or a school that might be interested in having some of these megawatt materials delivered to their classroom, or having one of our volunteers come in and give a talk about nuclear energy in their classroom, you can connect us to them. And also you can connect us to an organization that might be interested in supporting this endeavor. Easiest way to contact, my email, matt@generationatomic.org, or any one of us really can help. You can always look me up later on today. And that's it.
Super cool. It's like one of my favorite movies, Jump to Conclusions. You know, so
I've done a lot of STEM teacher stuff, right? So there is a National Association of STEM Teachers. That might be a good thing to do. And I put together talks on planetary, because I actually started as a planetary geologist, and nuclear in space. And there's nothing like planets to get kids excited about that. And then you say, well, without plutonium-238 and now the new nuclear rockets and stuff that we're doing, developing for lunar and Martian colonies, that's a cool way to get them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And we didn't mention it, but let's see, 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we were at the National Science Teachers Association conference in Denver and met a whole bunch of teachers, and they were all super excited about getting more nuclear stuff in the classroom.
I'm Mike Pellizzari, and I'm wondering, of all the laundry list of accomplishments of nuclear wins, how many of them were you involved in, or Gen A was involved in? All of them?
I don't know about that. Sure, all in some small tangential way at least, but yeah, it's clear it's a global community. We're all pushing in different ways. So yeah, but
I recognize a few of them you were involved in, but
yeah,
such a huge list.
There's a lot there, yeah, for sure. But I think it's rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. Where good headlines for Diablo Canyon, help another state pass a feasibility study, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yay.
I wanted to mention that I think the nuclear industry is missing an important segment of the market. Dow in 23 just announced, I guess in the last year, their new Seadrift facility, 80 megawatt small SMR, and they're doing it on the basis of economics, on the basis of carbon reduction, additional steam use for their plant. I think there's a lot of support you can get from the hydrocarbon refining industry that would basically, I think, and Dow's really opened the door. I think they've cracked the door for Motiva's, all the other large Gulf Coast, Texas plants to get involved and put small reactors in, and actually makes economic sense. It makes environmental sense. Just want to encourage you to do that also. You probably had it on your list. I didn't see it, but in 23, the Seadrift project is an important development, I think.
Yeah, I think we had the advanced reactor demonstration projects. I think we're on the 2022 one, but you're right. There's been more progress for that. Yeah. Do we have more?
Yeah, go ahead. The sanctions on Russia and the lack of importing oil into Europe and other parts of the world, I suppose, has certainly been a big push to help nuclear, I think. I wonder how you feel about, is this going to be a permanent change? Will they hopefully get addicted to nuclear? Or do you feel like maybe in 10 or 20 years, people will kind of backslide and go, hey, we're going to change back?
I think once you go nuclear, you don't go back, unless you're Germany. But yeah, I think you build those plants, and the U.S. has shown they're good for 80 plus years, maybe. So heck yeah, long term, let's do it.
I wrote about nuclear on Mars in 2017 with Thomas Doel, which was a fabulous project that was spearheaded by John Kutch. And the second edition is coming out. Actually, it's right now. I'm happy to work with you and develop a curriculum because there's lots of thorium and uranium on Mars. I have the data in my chapter. Happy to work with you guys and develop a curriculum, and I'm publicly declaring it. Take it for free. It's fun. All right.
Awesome.
So
thanks for that.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Stephen.
Very, very good. Now we got to kind of move. All right, fine. Give it.
Just one quick question.
I'm going to be the one answering, though, so I'm going to just pretend.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
The Indian Point plant in New York, what was your involvement there, and what is your prognosis for any restart, or is there any hope
for Indian Point?
What I understand from our friends there, Nuclear New York, who did a ton of the advocacy around that, they started pulling that thing apart almost right away, and it's too far gone to actually restart the plant that's there. That being said, Holtec is very interested in SMRs at all of their existing sites, Indian Point being one of them. So my best guess is one of the Holtec SMR 300s, maybe in 10 years. Who knows?
My personal Kewaunee up in Wisconsin was the greatest, most efficient nuclear plant in the world, literally from the day it was open to the day it shut down. So they're talking about bringing Kewaunee, maybe not the plant itself because they pretty much destroyed the plant, but the site license is still active. So just like Holtec, I think the company that got the disposition license is now changing their tune. So it's like I said, it used to be these companies, Holtec and these other companies, it was like the angel of death. Anytime they got their claws on these things, they were, their whole business model was destroyed.
And my brother's cabin is very close to Palisades in Michigan, so I talked to the nuclear workers up there, and I'm like, why does it take $1.5 billion to bring this plant back online? I mean, just turn the fucking thing back online, And he's like, well, it's not that simple. And I'm like, I know
it's not that simple. He's like, well, the real problem, what the $1 billion is for, is the minute they turned it off,
they destroyed the fuel loading machine. And I was like, oh. All right, well, there's your answer. So these guys are so eager to like destroy these unbelievable assets that it's going to cost. Now we have to spend $1 billion to build a new machine from scratch. So that attitude is gratefully that is changing. So you guys can talk amongst yourselves for 1 second while I bring up the next critter here.